There was a time when the world became so corrupt, so violent, so far from what it was meant to be, that God decided to end it. Not partially, not temporarily, but completely. Every life, every structure, every trace of what humanity had become. But in the middle of that darkness, one man stood differently, not perfect, but faithful. And because of that, he was given a task that would save the future of humanity. Generations had passed since the beginning, and what started as a single act of disobedience had multiplied. Sin was no longer hidden. It was everywhere, in thoughts, in actions, in intentions. Violence became normal, corruption expected. The human heart had turned inward, and Scripture says that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil, all the time. Not occasionally, not sometimes, constantly. And God saw it, not from a distance, but deeply. And what he saw grieved him. God made a decision to bring an end to what humanity had become, to reset, to cleanse, to begin again. Not out of anger alone, but out of justice. Because a world consumed by violence cannot sustain life. But even in judgment, there was mercy, because there was one man who walked differently. Noah. He lived in the same world, saw the same corruption, felt the same pressure, but he chose differently. Scripture says he was righteous in his generation, not because he was flawless, but because he walked with God. While others ignored him, Noah listened. While others followed their desires, Noah remained aligned. And that made him different. Not outwardly at first, but deeply. Then came the moment. God spoke, not to the crowd, not to the world, but to one man. Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me. And then the instruction. Build an ark. Not a small boat, not something simple, but something massive, detailed, specific, impossible to ignore. A structure meant to carry life through destruction. And Noah listened. There was one problem. It had never rained. No storm like this had ever existed. No reference point, no evidence, no proof. Just a command and a choice. Day after day, Noah built. Wood, structure, precision, while others watched. Questioned, doubted, mocked. Why are you building this? What are you preparing for? And Noah had only one answer: obedience. He didn't build because it made sense. He built because God said so. Year after year, he continued. Faith in action. Then it happened. The sky changed. The air shifted, and for the first time, rain fell. Not lightly, not briefly, but endlessly. And what once seemed impossible became undeniable. Noah, his family, and the animals entered the ark, and then the door closed. Not by Noah, but by God. A final moment, a separation between those inside and those outside. waters rose. Faster, higher, relentless. Everything was covered. Everything gone. What humanity had built, what it had become, was washed away, and the ark floated, not controlled, not directed, but sustained. And then silence. The rain stopped, the waters receded, and the ark came to rest. Noah stepped out into a world completely new. Not the same, not restored to Eden, but reset, given another chance. And God made a promise. Never again would the earth be destroyed in this way. And the sign of that promise was placed in the sky, a reminder that even in judgment, there is mercy. The story of Noah is not just about a flood, it's about a life lived in quiet obedience, long before the storm ever came. Because Noah didn't build the ark in a moment of crisis. He built it when nothing was happening. No rain, no signs, no urgency. Just a word from God and a choice to believe it. And maybe that's where this story speaks the loudest. Because most of life is lived in those same conditions. Not in the storm, but in the waiting. In the ordinary days when nothing seems urgent, when nothing feels different, and yet everything is being decided. Noah chose to trust before there was evidence, before there was confirmation, before anyone else understood. And that kind of faith looks strange. It doesn't always make sense to others. It doesn't always look practical. It doesn't always feel rewarding in the moment. But it builds something that can carry you through what's coming. Because the storm didn't create Noah's faith. It revealed it. The years of obedience, the unseen work, the consistency. That's what sustained him. And maybe the question this leaves us with is not, would I survive the storm, but something deeper. What am I building right now before the storm ever comes? Because we are all building something through our choices, through our habits, through what we prioritize. Something is taking shape, something is being formed, and one day it will either hold or it won't. Noah reminds us that faith is not just believing, it is building, even when it's quiet, even when it's slow, even when no one else sees. Because what you build in obedience today may be the very thing that carries you tomorrow. Noah didn't change the world overnight. He remained faithful over time. And when the moment came, that faith saved lives. And maybe the question is, what are we building? What are we preparing for? And are we willing to trust God before we see? But even after the flood, humanity would face the same struggle, because the problem was never just the world, it was the heart. Next, the story of a man called out from everything familiar to begin something new. If this story spoke to you, consider subscribing. and walk with us through the lives of those who shaped history through faith, failure, and redemption.